Yes, so the question was, how will someone that doesn't speak English participate? And the answer is that we will be supporting 13 languages, including English, to make sure that we have the largest participation. I can tell you here in San Diego, Vietnamese is definitely one of the top 10 languages that not only United Way will be covering, the U.S. Census and also SANDAG, but we will definitely be reaching out to as many communities as we can in their native languages.
Did you say that the total federal budget is $675 billion?
Yeah, so the question or the comment was, the federal budget annually is $675 billion, and California receives roughly $115 billion of that allocation, and it's just based on population. The question was, what are the requirements to apply for jobs?
Yes, it is. You have people who are in their 70s, but they are strong, they are focused, and they can work, but because they are in their 70s, throw them out.
The minimum requirements to, the question was, can older individuals apply for jobs? The answer is yes. The minimum requirements are that you have to be over the age of 18, you have to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to have a valid email address.
Are the jobs also felon-friendly?
At this point, we are taking applications, and if some individuals have, if something comes up in their background check, we will take it on a case-by-case basis. So, yes.
Any other governmental agencies get access to this information?
So the question was, can any other government agencies get access to census information? So first and foremost, I want to mention to everyone that census information is published only in a statistical format, so it is available to all of you. When it comes to personable, identifiable information, that information is kept confidential for a period of 72 years.
That happens
I'm Elise Fitzgerald, and one of the things that really disturbed one of these meetings is that we see each other like us. And today on the stage, there's nobody that looks like us. So I want to know if we have anybody in the voting capacity that looks like me.
Sorry, I had trouble hearing you. I think there's some mic there.
Why you got no black people on stage?
I'm Elise Fitzgerald, and I'm the vice chair of BAPAC, one of the retired, seasoned people that go to all of these meetings. And one of the things that has always disturbed us is there's no one that looks like me that has the voting capacity. So I want to know if there's anyone on the census board for San Diego with a voting capacity that's black and looks like me.
That is something that's not within the capacity of what I do. I think that's a question directly to other organizations, but as far as I understand, there is a stakeholder group that is being spearheaded by SANDAG, and they have different areas of expertise, right? So, for example, they have higher education, they have the voter groups, business groups, so I'm sure there is an opportunity still for other people to join, but that is not something that I control myself.
Thanks. I just wanted to, following Elise's question, so you were mentioning someone in SANDAG. Is there anybody in SANDAG in the audience?
They will be presenting later,
Okay.
so yeah, this is just the overview
Yes.
of the census, but yeah, if you can have those questions for others.
Okay, so I'll table that question too when we get to that point. And I agree with you very much. I think that's a big issue, why we're not represented. I mean, there should be one of us up there right now talking to us. And, I mean, I know this is not something that you have any control over, but I think it's important that we say that so that as many ears can hear it. And at some point, we're gonna take, of course, accountability for that and make sure that next go around that we'll be at that table.
Hi, my name is Glenn Oliver, and I just wanted to say I ran a complete count committee for a large city. I used to live in another city with a large ethnically diverse population with people of color, and we had a very innovative plan that I don't think has ever been done before. It was very successful, and it did require $150 million, by the way. Because we engaged the community, and we started out with same kind of skepticism, same kind of stuff that you're hearing today, and by the time it came around for people to fill out the census, we had the whole community engaged. And I'd be willing to share any information with anybody that is doing it locally.
I'll take
Thank
your
you so
name.
much, yes.
I'll take your name.
Yes.
I know that Sandag will take it too, so
Yes.
that we can learn from experience.
Thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Suzanne Veerling with BAPAC. And I have a question. It seems as if we've had, there's been a lot of engagement in San Diego. It looks like from the fiscal year 2017 and 2018 through now. United Way has been funded. Sandag has been funded. So one of the things that we have questions about is, when does all of this happen that we don't even know that there's this work coming in, especially when we as African Americans are part of the Hard to Count. You need us, you want us. Budget is $675 billion, of which we receive California about a sixth of that money. So why are the organizations that are in the hard to reach communities not engaged from the very beginning? Why are we not included from the very beginning of Census 20 with the scope of work that many organizations inside of the Black community could have participated with from the very beginning? These are the types of things from an organizational standpoint that create distrust. When now you're here in front of us, but you've been here talking about us since 2017, 2018. So we want to understand that, we just want to understand that, because we should be participating right from the very beginning, including with being funded to do the work. There are many organizations that are fully capable of doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. As I said, that we did have a convening in July where many, I don't know how many of you were there, but it was open to the public. It started at that point. You're shaking your head, you didn't? You weren't there.
Does anybody know about it? Yes.
Okay. And we started from there, and as you know, what we did then is we had established the bullet budgets. We've awarded the contracts to the various counties and then to the administrative community-based organizations. And Michelle Silverthorne from United Way is going to speak more about, okay, how do you get the funding? How do you know about this? And again, it's lessons learned. It's about best practices, and moving forward, all of this will be taken into consideration so we do it better next time around.
I just have one question. I'm a part of the media, and I'm just wondering, what media did you reach out to? I want to know. And to me, you're saying that you're going to look into something. We're looking ourselves. There's an empty seat. There's nothing else to explain. When you sat down, you knew that seat should have been filled by somebody of color. A Black person should have been in it. I'm confused myself as to why we just got shuffled with an excuse. When you should have felt within yourself, wait a minute, we need one more. We need a Black person here, because no matter what we say, dollars are green, but we still Black. So it's got to be about money that you don't want to share with us some kind of way, but you need us to get that dollars out there to get this whole country into place. So I'm confused, because I know you haven't reached out to the media I'm a part of, but it doesn't matter if you do or not. That seat shouldn't be sitting there Black without and empty.
I appreciate the way you feel because I've been in the same position many times. There aren't any brown faces represented many times either. So I understand where you're coming from. And all I can say is that I'm not the person responsible in making these choices. All I can do is communicate that message loud and clear. Additionally, when it comes down to dollars being granted to community-based organizations, that's where we come in terms of making sure that communities of color, all colors, are going to be represented in the outreach that we do and in the contracts that are funded.
And I'd just like to mention too, there's more that will happen later today, that there's other people that will be speaking on this work that's happening. We just happen to be the first three that are on this first panel.
Hi, my name is Samantha Jenkins. I'm a District 4 resident, representative of a number of community organizations and the community at large. And I had a few pointed questions for you. You referenced the use of trusted members and organizations within the community to do the work of outreach. And I've worked for a number of years recently with the unsheltered veteran population in San Diego. And as a veteran and an active duty military spouse myself, my concern is how have you all determined what your strategy is going to be for counting the unsheltered population? Those of us who have any knowledge of how services are administered in San Diego County for the unsheltered population know that the Regional Task Force has managed this process for a number of years and has managed also to consistently undercount the unsheltered population in San Diego. So my concern is, are they one of your trusted partners in this process? And if so, are they going to be, because you referenced the fact that you're going to allow the trusted partners to tell you what their strategy is for counting certain populations? That's my first question.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So we, as in the U.S. Census Bureau, we will definitely be coordinated and talking to the Regional Task Force on the homeless. However, they will not conduct the U.S. Census count. That will be done by the U.S. Census Bureau. So yes, we will be talking to them in terms of strategy, points of which they have identified where people in those circumstances live, as well as other organizations, so not just them, but for example, like Alpha Project, Father Joe, so many others. And then the last thing I want to mention is that we count the shelter population, as it was mentioned, very different than the general population. So we count those individuals at the beginning of the year from January up to March, and we include them in the process that is called group quarters. So at that time, we also count, for example, students that might be living at the university, military service members that are living on bases, people that might be living in hospitals or hospices for a specific reason, and then at that time also sheltered individuals, people that might be in transitional housing, as well as those that are on shelter in the streets.
Good afternoon, my name is Joanne Fields. I'm the Government and Public Relations Director for the Asian Pacific Islander Initiative. Thank you, Assemblymember Dr. Shirley Weber, for hosting this town hall. Thank you, Chevelle, for giving that enlightening flow of how everything is supposed to be working in the county of San Diego and Imperial. Thank you to the governor for pumping more money and emphasis for the outreach in the state of California to supplement what we're not receiving from the federal end. But to that end, we need champions as well in the Asian Pacific Islander community. There aren't many venues for us to share that. If you look at the languages to reach that was shared in the slide of required languages to reach in San Diego County, 9 out of the 12 languages are Asian or Pacific Islander. If you look at Imperial County, 5 languages that are not required are Asian Pacific Islander. But yet we don't have those champions, yet we don't have a venue, yet we don't have a vote at the table at Sandag. When we know we're at a border region, and yes, Latino, yes, I work with my brothers and sisters in the Latino community, we're a border region, but please don't forget that we are trying to get an accurate count for everyone under the sun. And when I hear that allocations and grants are available, so am I hearing from the ACBO standpoint that there's still grant money available? Because from my understanding, those grants are already closed. Or is there another pot of money that will open up at a later time? And my second question is that we've already talked about the gaps. We have great organizations here that may not have been participating from the very beginning. How do we get them on board? Because there are so many meetings, whether it's SANDAG, whether it's United Way, or other complete counts, because the allocation that we're just hearing that is going to SANDAG for the local municipalities, that's another round that these CBOs, if we're going to advocate, we have to go to each municipality. I appreciate the breakdown that Assemblymember Weber's staff brought for Assembly District 79. Out of the 3 languages need to be reached, it's Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. So 2 out of the 3 are API, but then we have to break that down, hard to count, all of that from now until April, which is also alongside maybe the most important presidential election. So we're gonna see mailers for the election, we're gonna see mailers for the census, so we do need to work on messaging very early on because we are gonna dump a lot of information all at one time. Thank you.
I've seen Joanne in a lot of meetings and I've gotten to know where the places are that we need to focus on. So I'm gonna mention a couple things about, oh wait, I wanted to answer your other question. So for the ACBO funding, so the subcontracts, so that's what Chevelle mentioned, that there's those 2 pots of funding, the SANDAG funding and then the ACBO. So the first, the applications closed a week ago Friday, but we did reserve a portion of that funding to see what happens once we give it all out, or not give it all out, but once it's distributed, once we've looked at applications, so that when we come back at the beginning of the year, when we're continuing to do this work, if we need to reallocate the resources or look at things differently, there is a portion of funding that's been reserved for that. That being said too, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier, the application process is closed. We got 71 applications in. If we look at those and we realize that those 205 census tracts that we know we have to identify, those 13 languages that we have to focus on are not represented in that application, in those applications, we can't do our work. So we have to decide what happens next. So if the right people haven't applied for the funding, we have to look at that and decide what happens, what we need to do to ensure that it is the right people at the table that are receiving the funding. There was another point you made and I don't remember what it is now. What was that?
A point of clarification, are you going to reopen the application deadline or
Extend it?
extend it?
It's
Or it's fine? I don't know if you're, I mean, I know you report to Nancy, so, I mean, you know, Nancy is the executive director of United Way, so, I mean, if you could go back and ask her that question, that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I can ask Nancy, but you know what she's gonna tell me? Go to the coalition.
Okay.
Because we have the subcontract working group, we have the executive committee, and these 2 work groups have been the ones that have been the most active, and they're the ones that have been laying the timelines in and doing the work. I mean, essentially I've been considering these work groups as my marching orders. They tell me what needs to happen and I make sure it happens. So just probably too much information, but there was initial deadlines for that subcontract application and it's been pushed back 3 times because the community said we didn't have enough time and we needed more time to do it. The process is in review right now, but again, if we are going through this review and the strategic planning committee looks at things and says this isn't right, then we'll have to come up with another process. We'll have to do things differently. And I don't know, maybe we can just go real quick. Can you go forward a couple, I think it's just maybe the next slide. So I went through the applications and everyone that's working in 79, this is the list of organizations that I came up with. So these are people that have been involved and that applied for funding. So if you see someone not on this list, then we need to know about it. But these are the people that I know right now that have said, yes, we're doing census work in this district. So if you don't see someone up there, you guys saw the slide with my email, you know where I am right now. you need to let me know. So we'll go back 2 slides and we'll continue with the panel, but please, other questions, like we need to make sure they're answered and we know what's happening.
Any more questions? Any more questions? I just want to make a point though, all due respect to some of the comments that have been made here. I still want you to understand that we are late to the game.
Right, yes.
We are late to the game, all right? From phase 1, when you were talking that slide back to collaborate, communicate, whatever, we were not at the table, okay? That is an important part. And there was no, and even in our local, the decision makers are making decisions about contracts and maybe even employment opportunities. We got to find out who's making those decisions. It doesn't seem to have an African-American voice, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, let me know. But yes, I have attended meetings, but all decisions are not being made, and it doesn't include African-Americans. That's the issue on the table.
The coalition, so I mentioned, so with the coalition, there's the executive committee, and there's 11 members. And so Chevelle mentioned a couple, so Layla Aziz is on there, Chris Wilson is on there, and I'm forgetting someone I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Gail Hong from the BPI community, and there was someone else that Chevelle mentioned, but yeah, so I'm happy to share any information,
but
and
it's
I
important
know
that you understand that our voice has been left out, and we're getting in the game. The train is moving again, and we're late to the party. And it wasn't intentional. It's just we weren't included at the beginning of the process. Let me just make 2 points, and then I'm done. Just an example. Okay. In regards to messaging that I brought out with regard to the messaging process, it included, in regards to African Americans, it included using criminal history.
That was I just want to interrupt,
so that's a
because
draft.
that was not local language that we used.
Okay,
that
it's a draft. It's not local language that we use. You're right. That's what I'm saying. We were not included in phase 1 in creating the whole structure of Census 2020. We were not at the table, and you can name names, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just letting you know that the majority of the people in this room and others have not been included in the process at the highest level in terms of phase 1, who was being hired, who the contracts were going to. I still have a question about, did the county have to give it to Sandak? Could they have given it to another organization that was much more qualified, that has hard to count clients? I mean, that's the kind of questions that, when I say not at the table, we weren't at the decision-making table when it came to those that are actually now in charge. There could have been other people, other nonprofits that maybe even had better criteria, that are closer to hard-to-count populations. I can name one that could have been part of the process. Actually, the partners, actually the one implementing the money, if we had actually had that opportunity to share, be included in that process. That's my point. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Hi, Michelle, and I just want to say that this is not personal. This is not personal at all. But I want you to hear that part of the issue as Black people for us is that when we say what is on our heads, our minds, and our hearts, there's always like a pushback. Right. But we did this. But look, I've got all these people here that were that's telling us you're still not listening. You're not hearing it. No one's blaming you because we know you don't make the decision, but we're just saying, hey, this is what we have interpreted based on the information ahead of us. So what are we going to do about it? Take action to make it different. That's all. That's it. You know what I mean? I just want to let you know that, I know you. I know it's not personal. You're doing your job. But how can we, all of us collectively, now knowing that we know, and knowing that you know what you're hearing, all of us, what's next? That's it. It's not personal. We just want to make this right. You understand?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that, and then just really brief slides on the things I'll say will help that and to show where there's still opportunity to engage and to be able to do this work. I mean, I mentioned before, and it's been mentioned, that it can't be done without the people that are in this room.
Absolutely.
I just have a question. I didn't want to go too long. This is 79th district, correct? So this is just San Diego County. So the same things that were asked today and experienced where we are, where we're not at the table, so, you know, so forth. Are you finding that as a common theme in other cities and counties?
I think I could speak locally. I am employed with the city of Chula Vista, and things just, it started happening so fast. And that deadline and the timeline that you did see on the board, it is really fast approaching, but that's a timeline that we were given by the state, so we had to back into that date. It wasn't a timeline that we set for ourselves. That would be crazy.
Right. And I know that part about the timeline.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the passion that you hear here where people were saying, A, you're not listening, B, we weren't at the table as part of the decision making from the beginning. I want to know that I'm asking if that is a similar common theme in other cities and counties.
I have had a few comments in Chula Vista. Like I said, I could only speak for Chula Vista. And it happened so fast. I just got involved recently. I think it was November when I started, right? The committee, was it? Not November. I was it? No, I didn't get it. So it was, so for, at least for us, we got involved very late in the game. So I do share your sentiments, but like I said, I cannot speak for other jurisdictions.
I can speak to that briefly. Again, as my role through the Black Census Redistricting Hub, again, a coalition of 35 Black-led and serving organizations throughout the state, I would say that it's varied. I would say maybe San Diego may be falling in the middle of that. I think in places like Central Valley and others where there's less investment in Black kind of civic engagement and community building infrastructure, it's been even harder, right? So I've certainly talked to folk in Fresno who are like, we're struggling out here. They're, you know, and other ACBOs who are like, we don't know who to reach out to. So part of our role as the Black Census Redistricting Hub, and particularly given that we're at capacity, there's only so many groups we can bring on, has been to say, hey, we're doing a scan of landscape, and we know there's a number of organizations in all of these regions that need some love too. So a lot of our role has been to, if we're getting new requests, to say, hey, here's the ACBO that you should be talking to, and also here are the other partners in our region that you could be working with to get other resources, to get involved at the local level. So I know, you know, we're working with Alliance San Diego, Pillars of the Community, PANA, Mid-City Can. I know a number of them have mentioned BAPAC by name, and I know there's a number of other organizations in the area that they're working with in a coalitional manner. So those are some of the things that we're trying to promote. Again, it has been a mixed bag. I think some ACBOs have a stronger pulse on the community and know where some of those groups are, and some of them are struggling to identify. And to be honest, you know, I think investment in Black serving nonprofits is tough, and particularly in regards to groups that have civic engagement capacity, the capacity to mobilize tens, if not hundreds of volunteers for phone bank and canvassing is even thinner. A lot of our work at California Calls has been investing in those capacities so more people can be at that table. So come 2030, we're not left behind and we can be front and center. And I think we've seen an impact of that with kind of Pillars and PANA being deeper into this work at this point. Again, I think we're still behind. I think a lot of folks will say we're not as behind as we were in 2010, and I think we'll be further ahead of the game in the next round. I hope that.
And so my question is, after the 2020 census, was there a serious attempt at lessons learned? And what are you doing differently this time, other than throwing more money at the census, which is a good thing, to try to you know, reduce the undercounting of all difficult to count populations? Thank you.
ACBO side, so I was involved in 2010 on the philanthropic side, so there wasn't this 1.66 million that came from the state. There was none of that came to community-based organizations. There was a small community organization called Foundation for Change that pulled together some funding. It was about $230,000, and there was 17 organizations that got $7,500 each to do what we're doing on this extremely high level. So definitely had looked back at the report that we wrote and looked to see what we did back then. We're doing the same thing, just bigger and hopefully better, and involving a lot more community partners and really going to the people that know where where we need to go and the work that we need to do. So there isn't a lot of lessons learned. That's always my first thing. I mentioned like having to recreate the wheel, not my favorite thing to do. I want to know how we did this and to be able to improve upon it. And there's not a lot that happened in 2010. A lot has changed. So, yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that I can say has been, I wasn't that involved in 2010, but essentially some of the things that we've been doing from our purview has been really making sure that we're engaging immigrant organizations and refugee organizations, and make sure that they're at the forefront of planning in regards to messaging and outreach. So again, as I mentioned, we're working with PANA, Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, working with BAJI, the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, and that's just on the Black Census Redistricting Hub side. I know other statewide partners, CPAN, which is Census Policy Advocacy Network, have a bunch of working groups on immigrant and refugee communities, and have a number of organizations that are part of that mix. I don't think that there was as much robust thinking about that in 2010. Again, I can't speak to that directly. I was just graduating, but hope that helps.
I'd like to say one more thing about that, and that is that there's a significant amount of funding involved also in the non-responsive follow-up campaign, that we're really going to go out there. We have the money, the resources to be able to do that when that wasn't available in 2010. The other thing that I mentioned before is the SWORD, that platform where we're monitoring everything. We know what every single community, down to the neighborhood, of what activities are going on right now up until the very end of the non-response period ends. And this is a way of chronicling everything that we do, so that next time around we'll have a history of what happened, and we can look at best practices and plan for the future.
BAPAC is sponsoring its 10th annual walkathon on next Saturday, starting at 7:30 at Choyas Lake. It's our fundraiser, our main fundraiser for the year. It allows us to have meetings like this where we can serve, a piece of something, a piece of pizza, and also hold meetings like this. ECC has been open and gracious to allow us to use the facility, but the fundraiser allows us to fund our meetings. So if you can participate, or if you don't want to walk with us, you can at least go online if you could at bapacsd.org, hit the donate button, and just go ahead and give us a little something. We appreciate that, because it does help us to have and convene our meetings here every third Saturday of the month. So thank you all for coming. Thank Dr. Weber. She had to leave. She stayed a long time, longer than I expected her to stay, after driving down from Los Angeles. But we thank her for putting this event together, this meeting. And we will be, there will be action taken. Our next steps will be convening the group that was here today. That's why we have all your names, your emails, phone numbers, and we will come up with our action plan in order to respond to some of the issues that we've raised here today. So we look forward to working with you all, but we're going to do it in a much more organized way, that we ensure that all people are of color, particularly African Americans, in AD 79, in fact, across San Diego County, which are only supposedly 150,000 of us, according to the 2010 data that Roberto showed us the other meeting we had. In San Diego County, we want to make sure that we are all counted. Thank you very much for being here today.